The movie begins in Brightburn, Kansas, where Kyle and Tori Breyer are in bed, hoping for a baby. Tori, tired of trying, just want to enjoy the moment. Suddenly, a loud crash and red light shake the house. Later, they miraculously have a baby boy, Brandon. 10 years later, Tori cannot find Brandon in his room, but hears him whistling during a game of hide-and-seek. She finds him hiding in the barn and hugs him. Kyle warns Brandon to follow barn safety rules. At school, Brandon impresses with facts about bees and wasps, but a boy mocks him. Only Caitlin defends him, saying smart boys like him will rule the world. That night, Tori sees a red light from the barn while Brandon shakes in bed. He suddenly wakes up and walks out through his window. Tori hears a loud noise and checks outside but sees nothing. She feels someone run past her and briefly spots Brandon before he vanishes. She finds him in the barn, whispering strange words and trying to open locked trap doors. He does not respond until she touches him. Believing he's sleepwalking, she takes him to bed. Brandon says he hears voices, but Tori downplays it. Kyle later talks to Brandon, admitting it was hard bonding with him. They connect over candy, and Kyle asks him to mow the lawn. Brandon throws the mower across the yard in frustration. A voice urges him to stick his hand into the spinning blades, but his hand is unharmed, and the machine breaks. At Brandon's 12th birthday at a diner, Tori's sister Marilee and her husband Noah join. Noah gifts Brandon a rifle, but Kyle refuses to let him keep it. Angry, Brandon slams the table, causing the arcade machines to flicker. When he refuses to leave, Kyle grabs him, and the machines flicker again. Tori convinces Brandon to listen to Kyle, and as they leave the diner, Erica, a waitress, watches them. At home, Kyle and Tori discuss Brandon's strange behavior. Tori reassures Kyle, saying they were worse as teens, and promises to be a better parent. Kyle suggests a camping trip to relax. While preparing, Tori tells Brandon to grab his jacket, but he ignores her, chewing on a metal fork. Kyle finds him and removes the fork, and Brandon wakes up, confused. Later, Tori finds disturbing pictures under Brandon's bed, including explicit images and pictures of human organs. Shocked, they decide to talk to him later. On a hunting trip, Kyle awkwardly tries to explain sex and love to Brandon, but Brandon misunderstands. At Caitlin's house, she is woken by music playing from her laptop. She sees sticky notes on it, feels scared, and calls her mom, Erica. Caitlin says someone was watching her, pointing at the window, and claims it was Brandon Breyer. Tori searches the woods for Brandon, worried he's missing. He suddenly appears, saying he just went to pee. At the diner, Tori talks to her sister Marilee about Brandon's odd behavior. Marilee, who is also his school counselor, thinks it's just puberty, reassuring Tori. Later, Tori sees Brandon drawing strange symbols, but he hides them quickly. That night, Kyle hears noise in the barn and finds Brandon among frightened chickens. He scolds Brandon and feels uneasy. The next morning, Kyle discovers all the chickens are dead and believes Brandon did it. Tori does not agree. At school, during a trust exercise, Caitlin lets Brandon fall, calling him a pervert. When he grabs her hand in anger, he crushes it, making her scream. Brandon's parents are called to a meeting with the principal, sheriff, and Caitlin's parents. Erica demands punishment, but Tori defends Brandon. She apologizes for what happened to Caitlin and leaves, while Brandon glares at Erica. Later, Tori tells Kyle about Brandon sleepwalking and trying to open the trap door. Kyle grows scared, believing Brandon might not be human and could be dangerous. Brandon is lying in bed when he suddenly understands the strange whispers in his head. He walks out into the rain and goes to the barn. At the same time, Tori is searching for answers about where Brandon really came from. She sees a red light shining from the barn. She rushes there and finds Brandon floating in the air above the glowing red light. Panicked, she jumps to grab him, but he falls and cuts himself on the metal of the alien spaceship. When Tori sees Brandon hurt, she comforts him. Brandon asks her what he really is. Tori decides to tell the truth. She explains how she and Kyle had a hard time having a baby, until Brandon came into their lives inside the alien ship. But Brandon pulls away, upset by all the lies. He runs outside, finally understanding the voices he has been hearing. They were saying, "Take the world." He screams, and his eyes glow bright red like lasers. Later, Brandon sneaks into Caitlin's room. She's scared, even when he brings her flowers to say sorry. He tells her not to be afraid because she is one of the few people who knows he is special. When Caitlin says her mom told her not to talk to him anymore, Brandon tells her not to worry. He will take care of it. That night, Erica, Caitlin's mom, is cleaning up the diner when she sees strange symbols drawn on the windows. Thinking it's a prank, she calls out to her coworker, Gary. Suddenly, the lights flicker wildly. Then, the windows shatter and a sharp piece of glass flies into her eye. Screaming in pain, she pulls it out, blood spraying on the floor. Erica tries to see who did it, but her vision is blurry from the blood. Scared, she grabs a baseball bat, swings it around, and locks herself inside the walk-in freezer. But a hot red laser cuts through the metal door. It gets pulled open, and standing there is a boy in a cape and mask, his eyes glowing red. Then, he kills her. The next morning, Tori and Kyle sit at the table, worried about what happened the night before. When Brandon comes in looking calm, they feel a little relieved. He seems to be accepting the situation. At the diner, the sheriff investigates Erica's disappearance. He notices something on the windows. When he breathes on the glass, he sees a strange symbol appear. At Brandon's counseling session, Mara Lee, his school counselor, asks about his adoption. She realizes Brandon now sees himself as better than others, after learning where he really came from. When he shows no guilt for hurting Caitlin, she tells him to be honest with her, even though they are family. She says she will have to report this to the sheriff. Brandon starts shaking with anger. Later, at a bar, Kyle and his friends talk about Erica's death. EJ suggests Brandon might be involved because of what happened with Caitlin. But when he's corrected, he apologizes. Still, Kyle worries Brandon is turning into something dangerous. Noah tells him not to worry too much, saying all kids act like monsters sometimes. At night, Marilee is home alone when Brandon shows up. He threatens her to stop the report to the sheriff, but Marilee stays calm and firmly tells him to leave. He gives her a creepy smile but listens and walks out. She shuts the door and texts Noah before going to bed, not knowing Brandon is watching her from the dark, wearing his red mask. As she sleeps, Brandon sneaks into her room, but before he can do anything, he hears Noah coming home. Noah is in the bathroom brushing his teeth and does not see Brandon behind him at first. When Brandon moves to his closet, Noah turns on the light and jumps in shock, seeing him in the mask. Noah yells at him and takes him outside to his truck. Before they leave, Brandon warns him not to tell his parents, but Noah is not scared. Noah tries to force him into the truck, but Brandon uses his laser eyes to shoot him. Then Brandon disappears into the darkness. Noah is terrified. He crawls into his truck and drives off. But Brandon suddenly crashes into the truck, causing it to spin out of control. The truck breaks down, and Noah desperately tries to restart it. He flashes his headlights and sees Brandon standing in front of the car. The lights flicker again. Brandon disappears, then reappears flying above. Noah looks around nervously before Brandon lifts the whole truck into the air and slams it down head first. The truck crashes, and Noah's jaw breaks on the steering wheel. He passes out, and Brandon uses his blood to draw his strange symbol on the road. Back at home, Kyle sits in silence, while Tori tries calling Marilee in a panic. Brandon walks in, hiding something under his shirt. Tori hugs him and asks what happened. He lies, saying he got hurt in a soccer game because of some bullies. Tori and Kyle know Brandon is lying, but feel helpless since they cannot take him to a normal doctor. Kyle blames them for raising someone who was never meant to be human. That night, Kyle dreams of the day they found baby Brandon, seeing him as a monster. He wakes when Marilee calls. At the hospital, Marilee is upset over Noah's crash and tells them Brandon visited her before it happened. The next morning, Brandon shows no emotion about Noah's death and lies again. Kyle explodes, accusing him of murder. Brandon shoves Kyle into a cabinet before Tori stops them. Kyle searches Brandon's room, finds a bloody shirt, and hides it. He later shows it to Tori, but she denies Brandon's guilt. Angry, Kyle says, "He's not our son," hurting Tori, who walks away. The sheriff finds the same symbol from Erica's case at Noah's crash. Kyle, reflecting on Brandon's childhood, decides to take him camping to reconnect. Tori feels hopeful and rests in Kyle's arms. Kyle and Brandon leave the next morning, the trip tense and quiet. Meanwhile, the sheriff visits Tori and shows her a photo of the symbol, 2 B's for Brandon Breyer. She pretends not to know, but the sheriff does not believe her and says he will return. Tori rushes to Brandon's room and finds his notebook filled with strange symbols and drawings of Erica and Noah's deaths. In the woods, Kyle tries to shoot Brandon in the head, but it does not harm him. Brandon kills Kyle with his laser vision. Back home, Tori calls Kyle, but Brandon answers. He says he's home and destroys the phone. Tori screams as Brandon begins wrecking the house. She calls 911, but Brandon cuts the line. The sheriff and a deputy arrive. Brandon kills the sheriff instantly and slams the deputy to death, her body landing near Tori, who hides under the bed. Tori escapes through the window, injures her hand, and remembers Brandon's past injury. She runs to the barn and finds the alien ship glowing. Behind her is Erica's dead body. Tori takes a metal shard to use as a weapon, then whistles to call Brandon. She tries to comfort him and stabs him, but he catches her hand. Angry and hurt, Brandon flies her through the barn roof. As they rise, Tori gently touches his face. Then he lets her fall to her death. Later, Brandon crashes a plane into the house to cover it all up. The news reports it as an accident, and Brandon, the only survivor, eats a cookie while watching, and the movie ends here. Hope you enjoyed watching this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up, share your thoughts in the comments below, and subscribe to our channel for more great content. Thank you for watching.